Hello, job seekers. Melanie here with CGL Recruiting, and we are on to session 14 of Interview Bootcamp. And our session today is going to be focused on how do you manage those questions that are trying to get to how you manage feedback, whether it's constructive feedback or just flat out negative feedback, and also those questions that are around how you deal with challenges that come up in the workplace. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet to our channel, please take a moment and do it now. It really does help us share our message as far as we can with other job seekers. If you feel this data is helpful in the end, give us that thumbs up. And I always love hearing from you in the comments below. I love to hear real world examples where you've had questions that might be a little different from these. Now, remember, all of these questions are actually from the survey that we did of over 100 HR people, where they gave us an incredibly huge list of questions that were their absolute critical must-ask questions every time they do an interview. So we're going to go through today, and for those of you that haven't watched any of our other boot camps, interview boot camp sessions, what we do is we're going to talk about the question, we're going to talk about what they're looking for in the question, and then we're going to talk about what is the best way for you to answer this in order to have the best chance of doing your best on it. So let's take a look at the first question that's in this area, and that is, how do you handle developmental feedback? Now, what are they looking for when they're asking you, how do you handle developmental feedback? Well, it's really simple. They want to make sure that you're not somebody who's going to get upset if somebody else is providing you feedback. They want to know, are you one of those individuals who thinks, nope, I'm right in everything. I don't need you to tell me how to do. Now, this doesn't mean that they're going to want to be micromanaging you. They're just trying to get a sense of how you handle developmental feedback. So what's the right way you answer this question? Well, if you answer this question saying, I don't really need developmental feedback, that's probably going to be a fatal flaw. So you want to talk about the strategies of how you look at it when people give you feedback. Do you incorporate it? Do you like having those conversations with individuals so you can continually learn how to grow and advance in your career and in your profession? That's what they're trying to look for, to make sure that there's not a fatal flaw here that they haven't yet seen in part of the interview. Okay, let's go on to our next question, which is, what have you learned from your failures? Now, the worst thing that you could possibly do to answer this question is to say, I've never had a failure. That is not what they're looking for. And the human condition is we are not perfect, and everybody has had times where things have not gone as smoothly as they wanted. So I actually feel like this is one of these questions where you can totally do your absolute best to shine your skills. And let me explain what I mean by that. When I ask somebody, what have you learned from your failures? The people that do the best are those that say, well, there was this project that I worked on, which and we were going along and we failed after a month or something. The project was just failing and struggling and not going. And so here's the strategies I used to address that. I stepped back. I took a stronger look at the data analytics that I was getting, whatever strategies you used to overcome that failure. And then you get to go through and talk with the interviewer about the end success of the project. Anytime you get a question like this, you do want to make sure that you are ending on that high note. It's not to say that we don't have failures. Everybody has failures. What you want to get across when you're answering this question is that failure didn't get you down. Here's what you did to address it, and here's how it worked even better. All right, let's move on to our next question, which is, what are some lessons that you have learned in your career? Now, this is one of those ones where a little bit of prep work can help you out. Because in the moment, if you're asked a question like this and you haven't gotten it before, you're going to spend some thinking time, right? And while it's okay to pause and think when you get asked questions, you don't want the pause to be too long, or you don't want to focus on something that maybe not be the best angle for the position that you're trying to get. So what are some of the lessons that you've learned in your career? It is always great if you can talk about one that allows you to then share a success. Like I worked with this one leader, and he showed me the importance of not only maintaining strategic oversight on a project, but also taking the time to get into the tactical. And I used that experience that I learned from him in that lesson when I did the following. And then you're able to say, here's the lesson that I learned, and here's how it actually helped me perform in my role and in my job. Again, anytime you get that extra chance to explain it out and do a positive showing of your skills, the better you're going to do. Okay, let's look at our next question, which is, how do you overcome challenges? Now, these challenges might be a question that's just asked, or there may be something that's going on here in the company. Perhaps there has been a challenging time frame. Maybe the last person in the role wasn't successful at doing this. They're going to want to know how you have overcome challenges. And again, they're going to want to see actual strategies in play. One of the biggest bits of feedback that I get from the hiring companies when they're interviewing candidates that we presented is, I really felt like they skated over the surface of all of my questions. And at no point in time did they actually dig into the details and give me information to show me that they actually did what they said they did. So this is another example where you can take this, how do you overcome challenges, to say, well, let me tell you an example of this. Way easier if you've prepped this in advance. So if you can't think of one that comes to the top of your head right now, this might be one that you want to write out. So if you're asked a question similar to this, it'll be a lot easier for you to answer it in the moment during the interview when you're a little bit nervous. Okay, our next question. What is the biggest mistake you have made, and what did you learn from it? Now, when a company is giving you a question like this, they're not trying to just look for your biggest mistake. Where you're going to see the difference here is some companies are going to just say, what is the biggest mistake you've made? And in that case, you're going to have to turn it to the positive. In this case, the company is structuring this question, or the interviewer is structuring this question in a way that they want to know your strategies. So if you stop and just say, the biggest mistake I made was a hire I did back in 2002, or the biggest mistake I made was not looking at the global workforce when we instituted this new process, and you don't give them what you learned from it, you're giving yourself a double hit on this question. So make sure you do actually come up and talk about what's the mistake that you made, but you have to make sure you go on to say what you learned from it. And I would even say you should give a mistake that is one that you can say, I realized it was a big mistake in the moment, and I learned that lesson very quickly. Here's what I did to turn this around, to make it at that moment where you still came out with a success. Remember, anytime they're trying to pull you negative, you don't ever want to lie, and you don't ever want to be false and dishonest saying you don't have a weakness, you don't have challenges and stuff. You just want to make sure that you're not undermining your candidacy by giving a negative representation of yourself. All right, job seekers, that is the way that you can handle some of these questions about those challenges. Now, if you have other ones that you've been asked that you don't know how to answer, or ones that you just want to share with other job seekers, take a moment now, put it down below. I always love reading all the comments. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.